Hi, my name is Terry Wallace, and I'm a research associate at the University of Minnesota in the Institute on Community Integration. Today, I am here with Dr. Christine Espin, who is a faculty member in special education and in educational psychology at the University of Minnesota, and Dr. Stan Deno, who is also a professor in special education in educational psychology at the university. And we have the privilege of talking with Stan today about the development of curriculum-based measurement and progress monitoring. So with that, Stan, what I'm really interested in is hearing a little bit about what does the term progress monitoring mean to you?
For me, it's a matter of change in student performance across time. So what kind of progress is a student making in achieving curriculum goals, especially in basic skills like reading, writing, arithmetic.
Okay.
But change or improvement in performance across time, I think, is the key to progress monitoring.
All right. So if you're using curriculum-based measurement to do that, what would that look like?
The typical curriculum-based measures nowadays are those in which a student in the area of reading, for example, would have a text passage to read from, and the student would read aloud for probably 1 minute, and we would score the student's reading in terms of number of words read correctly and incorrectly in that 1 minute.
Okay.
And we have similar measures in the area of written expression where students write for 2 or 3 or 4 minutes depending upon their age, and we have ways of scoring those writing samples to try to get a sense of how much the student is able to produce in that period of time and how much that changes across time as teachers are trying to help the students acquire that skill.
Okay. All right. So this must have some kind of history. How did it all get started?
In the early 70s, probably 71 or 72, I was trying to develop something called a university field station at an elementary school in Minneapolis. And the idea of that was that students working on their licenses in special education would come to the elementary school and work with me around trying to develop individual education programs for students in special education. At that time, there were actually special classes for students who were then referred to as mentally retarded, and we were disestablishing those classes and integrating them with students who were in something that we would now call learning disabilities, and trying to create a supportive resource program for those students. As students came out from the university to work with me, it became quickly apparent to me, at least, that they all had different ideas about what you ought to do in order to help kids. And some had taken classes from one instructor at the university and some from another, and they would have their own different ideas, and I couldn't figure out exactly how to hold them accountable for success in what they were trying to do. And since my background had been in research on the psychology of learning and its application to teaching, I was interested in the possibility of applying basic scientific procedures to evaluating kids' programs. And in order to do that, we had to have some way of measuring kids' progress, students' progress. And so I set about to design a system for progress monitoring in the reading curriculum that was being used at that time. And out of that, we created something called the database program modification system that one of the early students working out there, a woman named Phyllis Merkin, and I developed a manual with that title, and it refers to a set of procedures for monitoring student progress and evaluating the effects of student growth. So that all goes back for me to that period of time when I was trying to work with those students around their efforts to intervene and improve the programs.
You know, you talked a little bit about the whole system was initially developed to make sure that teachers could use it to make decisions. I teach curriculum-based measurement in the classes at the university and have done a lot of workshops, and I often find that the teachers are confused between curriculum-based assessment, or the kind of assessment that I was trained to do when I was an undergraduate at Slippery Rock State College, and curriculum-based measurement. And they always are asking questions about that. And can you explain what the differences are and how you talk to teachers about those differences?
Following that early research or that early work on developing database program modification, we had the good fortune to be funded by the federal government to create something called the Institute for Research on Learning Disabilities at the University of Minnesota. Between 1977 and 1983, then we had 6 years to do continued research and development on curriculum-based measures. We were actually trying to create what we were calling a formative evaluation system for teachers, on the assumption that if teachers had ways of evaluating students' programs in progress, that they would get better outcomes. During the first years of that Institute for Research on Learning Disabilities, we undertook a series of what we call the criterion validity research studies, where we examined the extent to which those measures that we'd gotten started with out in the elementary school were empirically related to standardized achievement tests, so that when we have a child read for 1 minute and count the number of words read correctly and incorrectly, does that actually relate to standardized test performance? And through a series of studies and articles that were published, we fairly well established a reliable and valid set of procedures that people could use in reading, spelling, and writing. Curriculum-based measurement is, in a sense, a proper noun referring to the particular set of procedures that were designed at the University of Minnesota back in that period of time. Whereas I think of curriculum-based assessment in a more general sense as any approach to information gathering by teachers or educators that involves collecting information about that student's performance in a curriculum. And indeed, if the some task analysis is being done, and there's some hierarchy of skills that's been identified, and there are informal measures of whether or not the student has acquired those skills, I think it's reasonable to refer to that as curriculum-based assessment. And there are variations on that, different approaches, but curriculum-based measurement is this sort of fairly specific set of procedures that a very large amount of research has been done on, as you know, since we've done literature reviews in the Research Institute on Progress Monitoring.
So if I can interrupt for a second, you were talking about using the measures so that teachers can find out if the kids were learning or not. Does that mean the same measures were used across the kids, and you could also find out whether instructional practices might work for some kids but not for others?
As it turns out, I think, and you're well aware of that the idea of standard measurement procedures that can be used across students at the same age or even at different ages really leads to the extension of curriculum-based progress measures to other kinds of educational decision-making. Since standardization is a key feature of assessment that allows for aggregation of kids' scores and summarizing them.
What other kinds of decisions are you talking about when you said it could lead to other decision-making?
Well, one of the really common ones, of course, is a screening to try to identify students who are at risk for academic difficulty or failure, school failure. So with these measures now, we can screen students at various points in the year, say at the beginning of the school year, within a classroom to try to identify those students that teachers need to focus on more intensely to try to prevent failure or to reduce the degree of difficulty that a student is having. And only by using common measures across children can you really accomplish that screening very effectively, I think. Goal setting gets to be important. Especially in the field of special education, when we're trying to establish long-term goals or annual goals, these data can be used to formulate or create those goals in such a way that teachers can monitor progress toward those annual goals. And when annual reviews are done of students' progress in the field of special education and the IEP, then those curriculum-based measurement data are the data used to evaluate the extent to which the goals have been achieved. one thing we don't think about very much is placement of students in different groups. So the distinction between, say, a student who's in special education who might be very, very low in performance in contrast to a student who is low achieving and at risk but wouldn't qualify for special education, different placement in different groups can be accomplished by using the CBM data.
I'm sorry, are you talking about placement into special ed? Do you using the CBM data to make those decisions?
Well, it
sure
turns
people
out
are
that that's a
interested in-
very controversial
Yes.
one, isn't it, Chris? At least in our experience, in our experience, as you know, there's been a lot of controversy over the extent to which you can use CBM data and should use CBM data as the primary piece of information for making eligibility decisions. You know that that was never part of my scheming about the development of curriculum-based measurement. That was never my intent. And at the same time, people, especially in the field of school psychology, I think, have been drawn to using curriculum-based measures as an alternative assessment procedure that can help identify students. And so there have been people who have pushed fairly hard for using CBM data as sometimes almost the sole basis for determining special eligibility, but that's a complicated political issue, I think, that I would rather not get myself into anyway.
I think you already have, Stan.
I can't get out of it.
No.
So I didn't tell you were going to ask that one.
Yeah. In the simplest words possible, how does progress monitoring make kids' lives better?
Well, it can make kids' lives better if the teachers use the information to make decisions about whether the children are doing well or not doing well. I think it goes back to that vital signs metaphor that I use all the time. If a parent is concerned about a child being sick at home, the parent might take the child's temperature, right?
Right. Yeah.
Just taking his temperature doesn't do any good unless the adults in that environment respond to it. The real value is always supposed to reside in the degree to which teachers could use the data to evaluate the success of what they're doing, to change programs and evaluate the effects of those changes. I think that we have a lot farther to go in terms of teachers' use of the data to produce more effective programs.
Well, we have to end now, but I just want to take a minute to thank you, Stan, for the history you've provided us and all the evidence showing us all the work we have yet to do.
Oh, my pleasure.
Christine, thank you too.
Thanks, Terry.
It's been an enjoyable
fun.
time. It really has. If you want to see more about what we're doing, you can visit our website at progressmonitoring.net. Thank you. So thank you all for joining us, and please, you can see more about what we're doing on the web. Blah 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 blah.
This is an outtake.
Oh, let's try that
I think it's an
again.
outtake. I hope it's an outtake.
I can do things once, but ask me to do them twice, and no.